Just recently, Demar Derozan was on First Take with Stephen A. Smith. He had something interesting to say about the Raptors' 2019 title. I'm just going to read out the quote. Never to discredit those guys. They won it. They deserve it. I finally had got to a point where I was happy for them. But for sure, I definitely feel like that. The only person we couldn't beat was LeBron James. That's just what it was. I felt off the year we had before. We just needed one more piece to kind of push us over the top. That piece came to be LeBron going to the West, and I didn't get an opportunity to see what would have happened, but the utmost confidence in myself. I have no doubt in my mind the same outcome would have happened. I have to say that DeMar is very, very delusional about that. I guess it comes from just being a player. You have to have irrational confidence in yourself, but he is delusional. I definitely don't believe DeMar would have led them to a title had he stayed in Toronto, that they would have been able to get over that hump. I definitely don't believe that. I say this as a Spurs fan who was unfortunate to see DeMar in a Spurs jersey. DeMar was easily one of my least favorite Spurs of all time. I felt he was this great empty stat player that he can get you 20 points on any given night. He can do it consistently, but he can't get you wins. And that's what I call an empty stat player, that he has a hard time getting you wins. He's not good at that, but he can get you 20 points, but he's not really that efficient when you look at his career numbers. Just he's decent. He's like around 46 overall from the field, so I'll give him that. He's a little bit more efficient than I thought he was, but it's like he struggles to really dominate a game when it matters, and he's not there when you need him the most. I saw that quite a few times when he was with the Spurs. I saw him disappear in like the biggest moments. I saw him melt down. I saw him lose his composure. I wasn't a fan of his pouting, just when things didn't go his way, the way he would just lose his cool. I'm not a fan of those types of things. I'm always from the old school. I identify with a Tim Duncan like demeanor. Granted, not everybody can be like Tim, but I feel as the franchise player, as a star player, you got to keep your composure when things don't go your way. And I saw too many times when things weren't going DeMar's way, he would snap on the refs, he would get emotional. I didn't respect that about him. But if we go back to the Raptors' 2019 title run, Kawhi had one of the greatest playoff runs in NBA history. And I say this as a guy who doesn't like Kawhi after what happened in San Antonio, but I can be objective about that, give him credit. During that 2019 playoff run, he averaged 30.5 points per game on 49% overall from the field, 37 from three-point land, averaged 9.1 rebounds, 3.9 assists, 1.7 steals, and 0.7 blocks. He was straight up dominant during that run. These numbers are like Michael Jordan like numbers. He was just straight up dominant on both ends of the court, offensively and defensively. You look at DeMar, he's never been dominant during the playoffs. When you look at his playoff history, he's never dominated the game, and he's never really been efficient during the playoffs. Like for his career during the playoffs, he averages 21.8 points per game on 41% shooting from the field, 21 from three, which is god awful. That means he's getting a very inefficient 20 points per game, and he's not really impacting the game. He's actually hurting his team with that terrible inefficiency. So he was never able to rise to that level of play. The highest playoff average he had was actually his first time in the playoffs, which was 2014, where he averaged 23.9 points per game. But again, his efficiency was crap. 38 overall from the field, 33 from three. He's never been great during the playoffs, to be honest. And most of the time, he's just terrible. He's like crap during the playoffs. Granted, he had an efficient series once in the playoffs, and it was with the Spurs. Ironically, the last time the Spurs went to the playoffs, which was the 2019 playoffs, where he averaged 22 points per game on 48 overall from the field. And he was terrible from three in that series. I didn't even remember he was that bad, but he shot 0% from three. So go figure. Just again, just underperforming during the playoffs. But he's always never been the one to step up when it matters. Like I said before, he cannot dominate a game like the way Kawhi Leonard can. Kawhi, like I said, as much as I dislike him, like when he's healthy, he is a dominant player, especially during the playoffs. He can really take over, and that's been proven since he became a superstar later towards the end of his stint in San Antonio. When you look at his averages during the playoffs, just his final year with the Spurs, he averaged 27.7 points per game, owned 52% overall from the field, 7.6 rebounds, 4.6 assists, and 1.7 steals. So he's been pretty dominant during the playoffs. I'll say that. I honestly believe had that Zaza thing never happened, I think he would have taken down the Warriors. I know some would argue that, but that's how dominant he was, that he could really take down teams just by straight up by himself to a large degree. That's how great he was. I thought he was really big throughout the 2019 playoffs against the Sixers, obviously with that shot against Joel Embiid. Against the Bucks especially, his help defense on Giannis was very crucial. That turned the series around. I felt after they were down 0-2. If we're being honest, DeMar could never do something like that. He could never be a great help defender on Giannis, but Kawhi played that role really great. He could do that. Kawhi can also impact the game on a defensive end, which is something that DeMar never had the ability to do. So to me, DeMar was basically like having a Walmart Kobe. His style of play was very similar to Kobe, but he wasn't as good. And I've never been a fan of Kobe. I've always knocked him for being inefficient, but I'll give Kobe credit. He's had some great playoff runs where he was. And DeMar never could be like Kobe, but he was like basically the defective made in China version of Kobe whenever he was out there, just not able to impact games the same way Kawhi Leonard could do on both ends of the court. I would say it's also the reason why DeMar is kind of like a journeyman in the sense that he can't really stick with one team for a long period of time since he left the Raptors. He's been in San Antonio. He's been in Chicago. He's now been in Sacramento. And I don't think Sacramento will be the final stop. Maybe it will be when this contract expires because he is up there in age now. Let me look how old he is. I'm just looking it up right now. He was born in 1989, so he just turned 35. So, yeah, I guess this probably will be the last contract. I don't know if he can play after a few more years. He'll be 38, so hard to say, especially with his style of play. Plus, his athleticism will start to decline even further after age 35. So, yeah, I just don't see him doing great things at this point in time in his career. I know King fans are excited, but I don't think he's the answer for their problems. But going back to his argument about how he would have won had he been in Toronto in 2019, I disagree. I don't think they beat the Sixers with DeMar even back in 2019 because Kawhi was so huge in that series. I don't see him having the same effects that Kawhi had on Ben Simmons, for instance, just disrupting Ben Simmons. I don't see that. So yeah, there's no way the Raptors win with DeMar in 2019. That trade for Kawhi Leonard was one of the biggest ripoffs in NBA history. I was against it even at the time when it went down. I was so furious about it. One of the worst moves ever. Just set back the Spurs for, I would say, 6 years. Granted, they got Victor last year, but they're still recovering from that trade now. We'll see in the next few years if they can climb back to relevancy. But yeah, it was a trade that set them back now for like 6 years. It could be a few more years. I would say they'll be back the moment they can win 50 or more games. So they're probably a few more years away. So if you estimate it, it set the franchise back probably by 9 or 10 years. So yeah, that's all I have to say.